So for learning exercise 9, we're going to look at some if-thens, writing a whole bunch of different if-then statements. We're going to do this in the context of a simple blackjack game. So I've created some of the classes that you'll need. We'll have two classes and done some of the work, but there's a bunch of if-then statements that need to be written to get this to work properly. So go down here and download this Learning Exercise 9 card start.zip and open it up, and you should see a project here with a blackjack class and a card class. And we're going to start by modifying some stuff in the card class. Let me just give you a quick overview of these two classes. Let's look at the card class first. So in the card class, for a basic set of cards, we're going to store for each card the face value, like 1, 2, 3, or Jack, Queen. We're going to just store that as an integer, which will be a number between 1 and 13. So 1 will be an ace, 2 will be a 2, and so on. 11 will be a Jack, 12 will be a Queen, 13 will be a King. And we'll also store a suit. Cards have 4 suits: spades, hearts, diamonds, and clubs. For the suits, we have a set of constants declared up here to keep track of them, because it's not obvious which one should be clubs and which one should be hearts. And so there's 4 constants: clubs, diamonds, hearts, and spades. They're public, final, static constants. This means static means that we'll use the word card dot clubs to refer to them, and we'll see that in a little bit. I'll walk you through that, but these constants are up here and you don't have to modify those. We also have a random number generator. We'll be generating some random numbers. So there's a constructor here. It gives us a random suit and a random face value between 1 and 13. We have a set type and some get values. Now we're going to have to get a couple things from the cards. Sometimes we'll want to get its value as a string so we can print out like a queen or a jack. So there's a get face value as string. Sometimes we want to get the value, not the face value, but the actual value of the card. So in blackjack, we're going to, jacks and queens face cards are worth 10 points, just like a 10. So face cards are worth 10 points. And an ace, we're just going to simplify things and say an ace is always going to be worth 11 points. So this get value has to return that value as an integer. This get face value has to return a string. This is 1, 2, 3. Well, for ones we'll say aces, and then for 11s we'll say jack and queen and king. So we'll do that sort of work. And so part of your exercise will be doing that. So you'll be modifying both the get face value and get value functions. Let's talk also about the suit. Down here a little bit more, there's a set suit. It's pretty straightforward. Get suit numeric just returns the numeric suit, but this get suit string, we want to return the string clubs or diamonds, depending on what the suit is. So we want to return that as a string. So that's something we'll have to update. Okay, and finally there's a toString method. The toString method uses the get face value as a string method above and the get suit as string method, both of which are you're running or helping write. Okay, so last thing we want to look at the Blackjack class. This just has a main routine. It creates a couple cards for the player, a couple cards for the dealer. Displays the dealer's cards, the player's cards by calling the toString function method, and also displays the dealer's cards, adds up the player's cards with the get value method, and prints that out in the dealers. So we can actually just run this now. I'm just going to run the main program. I don't have to create an object because it's a main static main variable. And so it says you are dealt 5 and a 7 for a total value of 12. Dealer is dealt a 12. And so all of these are just saying unknown suit because we haven't written that. Here it's saying a 12 rather than a queen because again we're not, the toString method isn't working. It's just returning a number right now. And also this value is not correct. So if this is a queen, that should be worth 10 points, and 4 points, that should be 14 points, and our score is 16. So again, it's not tracking the value of face cards correctly. And if we had an ace here, it would have even more trouble. So let's just follow these instructions. First, we'll fix the get suit string method and do that. Now I'll walk you through the first part of that. So we're going to open up the card class again, get suit string. And there's a string we set initially to unknown suit, a suit description, and that's what we're going to return. So we're going to play with that. Again, we're returning a string method, so we're going to return some different strings. So I'm just going to, let's just check now. If it is a club, we want to return clubs. So we can just write now, here's how we check things out. We say if now, where is the suit being stored? Up here, we have a suit variable that's an integer, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have these constants up here also, the club's constant. So I'm going to use this suit variable. Now, this is inside the same class that I'm in, so I can just say in this method, I can refer to this suit variable. I can say if suit. I don't have to say like my card.suit because I'm already in the card class. And then I'm going to use equals equals, of course, to check if something's equal to this. And then I want to say the constant clubs. But for these constants, they're in the card class, and so I have to say card.clubs to refer to this constant. So that'll refer to this club constant up here, clubs, and it's in the card class. So I can just say if suit equals card.clubs, then I'm going to do something, and I'm going to set this string that I've declared equal to clubs. I think I'll capitalize it. Again, this is just a string, so I can do what I want, semicolon. And then at the end of this method, we'll return that suit description. So I just have this local variable suit description here. I start saying it's unknown suit, and then I check the suit clubs, and I set the suit description to clubs and return that. So try to get that working. So you should be able to compile this. It should compile. Now if I run this, oops, I have to compile this one also, and run the main. Now here's where the new printout was, and it said I got a 12 of clubs and a 13 of clubs. So it works for the clubs. It still doesn't work for some of the unknown suits because I've only done clubs so far. So your job is to modify this class, add some more if-thens, decide you may have to do if-then else's or whatever, but modify this so that if the constants diamonds, we return diamonds, hearts, return the string hearts, or spades, return the string spades. So, okay. So that's the first part. Let's look at your next part. Now we're going to get the face value as a string also, which will be somewhat similar to this. In this one we're returning a string, and let's scroll back up here, get face value as string. So initially we set the string face value, which we're going to return here, our temporary holding variable for the string. We just set that equal to the face value, so the number. Now this is an integer, and we need to return a string. So I use this string. We're using this trick where we just take a simple quote and concatenate a plus sign, and then this value. We'll learn better ways. I think it's next week or the following week of converting integers to strings and that back and forth. But for now, this is a good trick. We can just have a quote here, an empty string, and then we do a concatenate with the actual integer. And Java, if it sees a string, will convert this to a string and add it concatenated onto this empty string. So this just takes this. So that's why right now when we run this, it'll say the value, just like 5 or 12 or whatever, right? But we want it to say, if it's an 11, we want it to say Jack. So again, you want to be checking, and so what is the variable you want to check? If I scroll up here, you can see it's just face value. Now we don't have constants declared this because they have a set order. So 1 is an ace, 11 is a jack, a 12 is a queen, and 13 is a king. So we have a pretty defined order. So you can just use those constants. So we want to just check the face value variable here. So why don't you try that out? Why don't you pause this video, try this out, and see if you can get this to work. So if you get the get suit string method running and the get face value string, these two methods that return strings working correctly, you should be able to compile and run your program. It should say something like that. You have a 2 of spades, an ace of hearts. So again, we should have the suit displayed here properly, and also things like ace or jack or 2, it should say the right card value, right? It shouldn't say 11 or 1 for a jack or an ace. Now these values here are still not working yet, but you should be able to get the rest of this working. So again, make sure you get a good try of that. I'll show it to you in just a sec. So if you haven't got it, pause the video again and work on it a little bit more, and then I'll show you the answer in now. Okay, so there's a couple ways of doing these methods. I'll show you this method. This uses a bunch of separate if-then statements. So I start by saying this suit description, this variable is unknown suit, and then I already had this clubs here before, and I just replicate this. So this is probably what you've had, and then if the suit's diamonds, you set it to diamonds. If it's the constant, if suit variable is equal to the constant hearts, you return hearts. If it's equal to spades, you return spades. So we're just replicating that idea. And then finally, we've set this suit hopefully to one of these values, and then we're returning this. Now, if somehow this integer got mixed up or whatever, we do have an unknown suit here that we default to right away. Now, that's one way of doing it. It's certainly not the only way. Here's another way of doing it. So here I'm using a set of if then else. So here I'm setting the string equal to an empty string to start with, and then I'm doing concatenations. I'm not quite sure why I'm doing concatenations, but this is just how I first wrote it when I was first thinking of it. So I thought I'd show you that too. So I set if the suit equals spades, I add spades onto the description. Else, if the suit equals hearts, I do it. Now I'm using these else ifs. So this is one big if statement. And then finally at the end I have an else. And this else will only occur if it's not spades, it's not hearts, it's not diamonds, it's not clubs. If it's not any of those, then this else will fire off and I'll set it to unknown suit. So these two do this exact same thing. This is just another way of setting it up. Similarly, I did this one with the string method. Here I default and said that the string, the face value is going to be by default just the face value. So if it's a 4 integer, I'm just setting this to a 4 string. And if this is a 5, this will be a 5. So this works for all numeric values. At least it's good for the cards 2 through 10. So I set it to that as to start. Now I check for the special cases. If the face value is 11, I reset the string face value to ace. Otherwise, I check for 11 and set to jack, check it to 12 and set to queen, 13 king. And then finally I return this variable that I declared up here. Now I declared it as a string up here and set it equal to its initial value. So that's how this one worked. Now here's another view, a different way of setting this up. Here I want this one, this get face value as string. So here I set the string face value to quote to start, and I did a set of if thens. I said if the face value is a 1, set the string to an ace, jack, queen, king, did all those. In each of these, I use an else if. If this is true, else. If this is true, else. If this is true, else. If this is true. And then this final else is for all the other cards. So this is for the cards 2 through 10. And I did string face value is just equal to face value. Now I'm doing plus equals. I'm concatenating here. So since this is already a quote here, this will just add this integer on, and concatenate that onto the string. So again, there are multiple ways of doing this. So there's not necessarily one better way than another. So just make sure yours works in all the cases, for all the special cases and for the normal cards. Okay, let's close these up. And let's have you try this get value. So let's look at that method. It's in the card class, and it's right above here towards the top of the methods here. So again, we have the face value, and it's 1 to 13, but when we're counting in blackjack, ones are going to be worth 11. So this get value, if our face value is 1, we wanted this value to return an 11, because aces are worth 11 points in blackjack. Oh, it could be 1 or 11, but we're simplifying it and saying 11 only for now. And face cards, Jack, Queen, King, return a value of 10. So again, this is returning an int. So we're checking this variable called face value. And we can't, right now we're just returning that. We're just saying value equals face value and returning value. But that's not always going to work, because if face value is an 11, we want to return this as a 10. And if face value, so put in some if-thens here to check for the special cases of what face value might be, and set the value to the right thing, so then we can return that. Okay, did you try that out? If you haven't tried it out, pause and try that on your own for a little bit. It's important that you try this stuff on your own rather than just copy my code, because when you have to program for a company or for a quiz coming up, in both cases, it's good to have practiced this. So so now that you've tried it for yourself, I wrote this as a series of if-then-else statements. There are probably better, easier ways to do it. So if you wrote this as a set of separate if statements, that will work just fine too. So there's different ways of setting this up, like I mentioned before. So you just have to get some way that works. So again, if face value is 11, I want to return a value of 10. And if it's a queen, I want to return a value of 10. And if it's an ace, I want to return a value of 11. So if I get this to work, I should be able to compile this and run this main method. Let's try this again. Run this main method. Okay, so now I have a jack of spades and a 10 of hearts. So that should be 20, and I've got 20 here. It shouldn't be 21. A jack should be worth 10 points face card, so that should be 20. Similar here, this is a king and a 10. That should be worth 20 also. So you should test this out, see if you can make sure that your aces are working. You may have to deal a couple hands to get to an ace. But here's an ace and a queen. That's a blackjack. That should be 21. So that's working fine. Okay, so get that working. That should finish up our card class. And now we're going to do a couple things in the blackjack class. Right now the player always just gets 2 cards and that's it. Now in blackjack, in real game, you can ask for another card or another kid. Often this is called getting a hit, or asking for a hit or another card. So we're going to simplify this and just ask for, have the user ask if they want one more card. So we're just going to say, here's an example. So display the 2 cards, total value, and say, do you want another card? Enter 1 for yes and 2 for no, and then they'll enter some value. We'll read that into an integer variable, and then if it's 1, you should display their cards again and display their new card. So before they had a king and a 6, and now they have a 10, a king, a 6, and they have a new total here. So again, we're going to ask users if they want one more card, And if they say yes, we're going to deal that. If they say no, then we can just display the dealer's cards. So let's look at the blackjack routine and see how that works. So again, we declare two cards, player card 1, player card 2, and two cards for the dealer, dealer card 1, dealer card 2. We say what they're printed out. We display, we use player card 1, and we use this toString method to print out the card. And again with the second card. And now we get the players, we declare an integer up here for the player's value, and now we calculate that. We take the player card 1 get value, which you just updated, player card 2 get value to get the values, and then we display your total value is. Now here, right where this comment is, we want to ask the user for one more card. So why don't you try this on your own? If you have trouble with remembering how to do inputs, I'll give you a quick hint on that, and then after that I'll show you how a solution is. So pause here and try it out first for yourself. Okay, now here's a quick hint on the how to do inputs. So again, remember back when we did inputs, we just had to print out, do you want another card, one for yes or two for no. We just print that out. And now we're going to declare an integer called response here, and we're going to use scanner. There's a scanner already declared up there, scanner.next. Now we're reading an integer, so we can just say next int. So this will read whatever they enter, 1 or 2, into this variable response. And again, you can call this anything you want. You call it user choice, user hit, response, something like that. And then you want to check here if the response is 1, you want to do a third card, print that third card out, recalculate the player's value, and reprint the total. So try that. So I'm writing if response is equal to 1, and again this is just an integer, so I can just say if response equal to 1. We'll learn about comparing with strings coming up next week. Now I'm going to declare another card up here. I'm just going to say card player card 3 equals new card. Now when I say new card, that constructor sets the card to a random suit and a random value to start with. So that's all set. Now, so if response is 1, I'm going to redisplay their cards. So I'm just going to copy this code here and put it down here. Let's tab it over a little bit. Except I want to display all 3 cards. So I'm going to display all 3 cards so they see all 3 cards. I'm going to recalculate the value because we'll need that. But now I have 3 cards, so I'm going to add in player card 3, I think I called it. And then I have to call the get value method like the other ones to get the right value. Okay, so now I recalculate the player value to add all 3 cards together. And then I'm just going to copy this code. I can just use this code again. I'm just going to say your total value is this. So if they said yes, I do this. Now what if they said no? What do I want to do? I don't really want to do anything. I just want to go on to the dealer's stuff, and that's already here. So I don't need an else here or anything like this. I can just say this one if here. Okay, let's try to compile this. See if we can get this to work. Oops, I'm going to clear this off and run this again so you can see it a little better. Okay, run main with a clear screen. Okay, you're a delta 6 and a queen. Your total is 16. Do you want another card? I'm going to say yes. Okay, you're dealt a 6, a queen, and a 7 of diamonds. You know, we could just display the third card here if we wanted. I'm displaying all 3 cards. So again, depending on how we want to do this, you might want to just display the third card. Now I look at it. Okay, your total value is 23. Dealer has this. Okay, so it goes on and doesn't do that. Now what happens if we say no? So I'm going to run this again. So King and an 8. I've got 18. I don't want another card, so I'm going to say 2 for no. And it just goes on and tells me what the dealer's cards are. So that's what I want it to do. Okay, so that's this first part here. Now let's see if you can do this second part. After the dealer's cards are displayed, check if the player's value is more than 21. If so, tell the player they've busted. If the player doesn't bust, then check if the player's total value is more than the dealer's total value. Okay, I'm going to leave you to do this a little bit on your own, I think. Well, let's get you started and see how you do. So, we're going to check if the player's value is greater than 21. So again, way down here, we've done this sort of stuff now. We display the dealer cards, and now we've got to check some things. So there's two values. There's the player value here, which we've calculated, and the dealer value. So now, if the if the player gets over 21, that's bad. It means you busted and you lose. So I'm just going to say if player value is greater than 21, and then I'm going to print out. Okay, so if the player's value is greater than 21, I'm going to print out busted, you lose. Now this should compile. Oops. And I got to make sure I don't capitalize my ifs. Let's see how that works. That's better. Okay, so if player value is greater than 21, print this out. So this is part of it, but now you also want to check if the player doesn't bust, so else, check if the player's total is more than the dealer's total. So if the player has more than the dealer, then the player wins. Otherwise, the dealer wins. So add some more if-thens or else's or whatever else you need to do here so that it either tells you that the player wins or the dealer wins. I'm not going to specify ties, so you can decide how to do ties yourself. If you want to say tie, or if you just want to say if it's a tie, you want to say the dealer wins or the player wins. We're not going to specify that for this if then, just see which way it works. Or I mean, you can do it any way that's easy for you to do at this point. So add those if thens, and then you'll be done with this lab. You just have to zip it up and send it. Now, if you're bored through this lab, one thing you can do is add another thing. Add a check for if the dealer's total is less than 16, give the dealer another card. So if you want, you can go in here, you deal out the dealer's cards, and then you can say, here, if the value is less than 16, give the dealer another card and see what it does. Now, one thing you have to watch then is the dealer could bust too. So you have to make your if then a little more complicated to decide who wins and loses or who busts and loses. But that's a nice little challenge. That's not too hard to do also. So that's a fun thing to do. Okay, certainly not a full game of blackjack, but a nice simple version with if-thens for us. So again, just zip it up and submit it when you're done.